Hi, it's Wednesday, 2:30. Back at home, just arrived home. So I thought, well, um, whilst it's all in my mind, I'll give you a bit of feedback. You probably can tell I'm a little bit exhausted from that. So let me just very quickly run through what happened. So we got there about 12 o'clock. It's all very pleasant. The nurses and staff were very welcoming. Was taken to where the MRI suite was with the nurse. She walked me down. That was really good. We sat down and did a bit of paperwork, checking whether I was pregnant or not, which I was able to confirm I wasn't, but, and signed the various consent forms and all of that sort of stuff. And then was taken into a little changing room where they gave you a little locker. You didn't have to strip off. All I had to do was, because it was a brain scan, all I had to do was put a top on, take my rings off, take my watches off, all that sort of stuff. And then they put a thing in my arm, a cannula in my arm, which was, little pinprick, reasonably pleasant. And then they called me into the MRI suite. So the one I went into, you go in on the right hand side of this little room where there's somebody with a computer and a nurse looking at the images, and there you see this big device, which is like a big round tunnel, white big round tunnel with a bed on it. So the nurses were fantastic, I have to say. So obviously mine was a brain scan, so you lie on the bed and your head goes into basically a plastic device, and then what they do is they put some cushions, quite hard cushions, on either side to make sure your head doesn't move. Clearly very, very nervous, and I do suffer a little bit from claustrophobia, not massively, but I do. And then what they do is they give you a little device for you to hold on to, like an alarm device that you can press. And then they explain what happens. In my case, it was 5 sessions of about 4 to 5 minutes each session. So 25 minutes in the tunnel. So at that point, I was getting more and more nervous, as you can imagine, being given lots of assurances from the 2 nurses that were with me. And then this is where the horrible bit happened, which was that they then put like a plastic device on the top of your head that clips into the 2 side panels where your head has been. So it's a bit like probably a helmet. At that point, I then started to get very nervous and very claustrophobic because I'm captured in this device and I know I cannot get out. So they reversed me electrically into this device, and at that point I just couldn't cope. So I asked them to take me out immediately, and they took me out. And I was panicking. It was not very pleasant, but the nurses were fantastic, telling me that I'm not the only one it happens to. It happens quite frequently, and quite a lot of people actually just walk out and don't actually get the MRI done. But what she suggested was, in my case, whether I'd wear an eye mask, in essence, an eye fold thing, which I did. I said, let's give that a whirl. So she put that on, put the plastic clamp back on to the 2 sides, and wheeled me back in. And whilst it was still very claustrophobic, what I did was I closed my eyes. The eye mask was dark, and for the first 3 or 4 minutes, it was just sort of trying to hold it together. And what I did, which really, really worked for me, was I asked if one of the nurses could just stand on the end of the bed and hold the bottom of my leg, such that I knew somebody was there in case I needed to get out. And I don't know why I asked for that, but they did that. And that made a massive difference to me. It was absolutely brilliant. And I just knew there was somebody there if I needed it. And so I went in, closed my eyes, and just lay there. And then what happens is, for those of you who've never had an MRI, there's a whole load of buzzing and, more importantly, banging. So consistently banging for 2 minutes, 3 minutes at a time, where the MRI is doing its stuff. At the end of each cycle, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, the nurse through a loudspeaker tells you that they finished, and then they're going to do another one, and it carries on. And then after, I think, 3 or 4 sessions, they wheeled me out and they connected the cannula to the tracer fluid, which goes into your body and circulates instantly around your body. And it felt a little bit warm in my tummy. It wasn't, you couldn't really feel anything. And then I went back in for a further 5 minutes. And again, that's what I did. I closed my eyes. And what I also did, which helped me, is I counted. I knew 60 times 5 was 300. And I just went 1, 2, 3, through to 300. And I only got to about 250 and we were finished and out. And then we came out and spoke to the nurses. The results will come at some point in the future. And then what happened was you then have to sit for about 10 or 15 minutes to make sure you've got no adverse reaction to, I think, the tracing agent in your body. And generally, I did feel a bit queasy and a little bit lightheaded when I came out. But there was a little coffee machine. I had a cup of coffee and everything was fine. I got changed, put my clothes back on, the sweatshirt I've got on now, and then wandered back down to the reception. And my wife Sarah was there to pick me up. And I would highly recommend that you have somebody to drive you there, because I did feel a little bit wobbly, to be honest. I'm sure I could have driven, but it was clearly safer for my wife to drive me home. So we got home about 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I'm going to sit and rest, and I'm sure that I'll be having a bit of a sleep, because I can feel already that with all that banging for 25 minutes or so, I'm going to end up with a bit of a headache. So that was my journey. It wasn't pleasant at all, but those were my coping mechanisms. Put the eye mask on, in my instance, made a big difference. Close your eyes. And what I did is I then counted. But probably for me, the most important thing was having that nurse just having her hand on the bottom of my leg. It sounds ridiculous, but having a nurse put her hand on the bottom of my leg made a huge amount of difference. And then after 5 minutes, the lady said to me, "Is it okay for her to leave?" And at that point she left and went into the room, and I was fine. I coped, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. So next steps are we wait for the results, and I've got a consultant's appointment in the next 10 days or so, where we decide how the next operation is going to go. And that's it. Hope you find the video helpful. Hope you find the experience helpful. As I've always said, it's about telling you as it is, not sugarcoating it. And the journey we're on, as I would always say, it's one step at a time. So please follow, please share, and subscribe, as they say. And I'm still getting used to all of this subscribing stuff, and somebody does all of that for me. But please share, please subscribe, because everybody is affected by cancer, not just the people who are suffering it, but all of their family, their friends and their colleagues. So please share, subscribe, and share it and pass it on, because my only aim here is for everybody to benefit through the journey, whatever that journey takes. Thanks for listening. Speak to you in the next few days. Bye.